The Great Train Wreck of 1856 was an event that occurred early in the morning on July 17, 1856, in the city of Whitemarsh Township, Pennsylvania. Early in the morning, one train was full of children and supervisors from the St. Michael's Catholic Church on the way to a picnic. There was a confusion by the conductor of the other train as to who was supposed to be on the track. The collision was a brutal one and resulted in over 60 deaths and severely injuring over 100. The train wreck was the deadliest of its time and led to the changing of many railroad rules and operations. Shortly after the wreck, many locals rushed out to try to help save the victims of the crash. This illustration was shown in Frank Leslie's illustrated newspaper that closely covered the event of the Great Train Wreck of 1856. This illustration shows the severity of the wreck, as both of the trains are completely demolished upon a collision. Parts of the train and even wheels can be seen flying in the air, which depicts how massive this train wreck really was, and even looking at the picture is painful to me. The train wreck occurred in 1856, which was 25 years after the first railroad was built in the United States. Since railroads were relatively new, the technology was still developing, and all of the operations were still being figured out. There were many complications with trains as they started to emerge, and each time there was a problem, it would be a learning experience and would be fixed to ensure the safety of these trains. At this time, the railroad industry was booming, and railroads were being built all around the country due to their ability to quickly transport both goods and people across the country. The construction on the North Pennsylvania Railroad began in 1862 and was completed and ready to start operating trains on July 2, 1856. 15 days after the railroad was opened, the tragedy of the Great Train Wreck of 1856 occurred and led to many Americans being concerned with the safety of the railroads. The news of the Great Train Wreck of 1856 shook the whole country. Many of the church kids heading to their picnic had been pronounced dead, and for the country to see the ages of the dead children was just horrifying. Being the most fatal train wreck of its time, people wanted to know what happened and how to make sure a tragedy like this never happens again. Many changes were made to how railroads were to be run moving forward. The major change made to the railroad operations was that trains traveling in the opposite direction can no longer share the same track. The train stations also improved their communication so that they can notify trains running late and anything else to ensure that the stations were on the same page. Overall, this event was significant to world history because it was a wake-up call to railroads worldwide that they had to change how tracks were being operated so that no more tragedies would occur. After the event, many new guidelines were forced upon these railroad stations in order to make them safer. We still see these railroads following the same precautions today. No trains are allowed to run on the same track in opposite directions, and the communication at train stations is incredible with all of the technology that we have gotten over the years. Since railroads were brand new at the time, there were lots of unknowns about train travel, and the Great Train Wreck of 1856 opened eyes and showed what was flawed in the operation of these trains.